Hello and welcome to another edition of the Peninsula Biz Buzz. My name is Shelley Smith, here representing Premier Rapport and the Peninsula SHRM as your co-host. Over to you, Bob.
Hi, I'm Bob McKenna, the President and CEO of the Virginia Peninsula Chamber of Commerce, and it's Friday. And I know we have a hard time keeping track of the days lately because they're all just kind of melding together, and we think it's week 3, day 5, but it's actually Friday. So maybe by the end of the day today, we can all take a little bit of a break for ourselves. So today we have with us Mayor McKinley Price of my hometown, the city of Newport News, also Shelley's hometown. And Mayor, I'd like to just ask you a few questions and see what's on your mind and see what's going on in the city of Newport News and in Mayor McKinley Price's life. So first question is, Newport News seemed to be running on all cylinders. Things were going very well a month ago. And then 3 weeks ago, we have this black swan kind of incident that, you know, we read about in those management books, but we hoped would never happen in our lifetime, and it happened. So how have you adjusted your daily routine? And what are your priorities and concerns that you're working hardest on right now for the city of Newport News?
Well, first of all, knowing the way our local government runs, the mayor is supposed to be a part-time ceremonial position. I'm a dentist by trade. I still was doing 32 hours in my dental office, but that's changed now since that's been shut down. I'm only going in maybe an hour or two just to see emergencies. So therefore, I'm spending a lot more time here in the mayor's office and trying to keep communications between the departments, the city manager, myself, and the other city council members. And you're right, you know, things were going well. A lot of projects going on, a lot of building and construction going on throughout the city. And a lot of that, especially with the restaurant business, is really hurting right now, shut down. So we're trying to abide by the rules that the governor has sent down. I did a very strong video out to the public yesterday of a stay home. No matter what it is, unless it's an emergency or you need food, prescriptions, otherwise just stay home. We've got to get through this wave of this, and the way to do that is not to stress our medical facilities, and that's the purpose of all this, what they call flattening the curve. We want to make sure that we can get through this without having to have our medical people decide who will not get treatment.
Yes, like it's happening in Italy right now, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And probably New York in a few minutes if they hadn't done what the governor just did, and that's to he did a mandatory, as far as the Army coming in, the reserve, to redistribute resources where needed. So if there's a hospital somewhere in the state that doesn't have that dependency of the equipment, then he's going to seize it, or seize was not, that's a strong word as he said, but redistribute the resources where they're needed and then send them back. And I think that's going to probably catch on as this develops through the other states.
Well, yes, you're probably right, but let's hope not. Let's pray for the best, right?
Absolutely.
So, I watched your video. I thought it was very effective and a good message. I'm also struck by the fact that you are, and you mentioned this, you are a small business owner yourself, really, as a private practice dentist. So you have this empathy for the other small business owners that can be part of your effective response. So how does that change the way you're thinking about things, or temper the way you're thinking about things?
Well, I think as a country and as a community and as a small business owner, you have to reprioritize. Right now, we're in a healthcare emergency. The state of the business is secondary to staying alive, to make sure that you're going to be there for yourself, your family, and your community. So once we get through that issue, then my focus will be back on, you know, the things that we need to do. Just as any business is doing, you're doing what you need to do to survive. And in the healthcare profession, you're doing only those things you need to do for people who are in trouble. And that's the way we're approaching it. So we'll get through this. I think it's going to be a while before economically we're back on where we were. But right now, the focus is on the healthcare issue before us.
Okay, so at some point, and I know you're thinking this too, at some point we need to pivot back to the economy. When do we know when that point has arrived? Because the longer this goes on, the more people who are unemployed and living on basically their day-to-day earnings are not going to be able to take care of basic needs. So how do we know when the pivot point has arrived? And what do you see that the City of Newport News has that will help us recover? Because I think we have some natural gifts that will help us through this next recession.
Right. I think you'll see that once we see this wave go through, and Congress has done what I think they need to do to temporarily put a Band-Aid on this. I think we're probably going to have some type of recession. To what extent depends again on how long this lasts. We're fortunate to have one of the largest employers in the state, and they have contracts that for the next 10 to 15 years. I think that will help. The thing that we have is that we are in this together. We're going to try and make sure that any resources that the city can help with, we will have them available to our citizens. The main thing now is to communicate and look out what's best for the employees. Sometimes furloughing is better than reducing hours, depending upon what the government facilities or government resources are for your each individual case. And the small business is going to have to look at that individually to see what their company is doing, if they're part of a larger company, or individually if they're small companies, to look at the numbers and see what's going to be best for your employees to do.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So I've been talking a lot lately about a maritime triangle in the Hampton Roads area. And I think that maritime triangle, which is the 3 points, are represented by Newport News Shipbuilding, which you already talked about, the Port of Virginia, the International Gateway, and Norfolk Navy Base, the largest Navy base in the world. So those 3 points of that triangle, I think, will help this area recover quicker and more easily than some other areas. But in Newport News, we have a triangle too, and it's kind of the same thing. It's Newport News Shipbuilding, Fort Eustis, the Army base, so we'll have defense contracts and the military, and Jefferson Lab. So what do you think about the uniqueness of those gifts that we'll really lean on to recover?
I think that's a vital point that you make. These resources in our community, which has made us stand out in my mind nationally for years, because we do have those things. So because of the contracts that they have, the continuous work that's going to be needed, those who are employed there as this wave goes through will of course re-engage and continue to, I think, help our local economy as well as the people who are employed there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Shelley, over to you.
So, Mayor, a couple of things you've talked about specifically, but are there any final closing thoughts outside of or on top of what you said about stay at home, be mindful, take care of yourself? Are there any other comments or resources that are happening in Newport News that you want to share to the listeners and the viewers today before we put a wrap on today's edition?
Well, I would re-emphasize the personal care that you have for yourself and your family. Washing your hands, you can't do that enough. Hand sanitizer, if you don't have soap and water being better. Any protective gloves that you may use. There's some, immediate research now about whether or not facial, there's arguments about that, whether masks are available or not, but at least it will prevent you from spreading it if you are a carrier. If you have something over your face, it will not protect you from getting it, but it may protect you from spreading it more. Being mindful of only going out if you're grocery shopping, not to hoard, but maybe buy a little bit more than you normally would so that you don't have to go out so often if you can afford to do that. Just following the guidelines that the government is sending down and your local government as well. And then realizing that once we get through this, I think the economy is going to bounce back very quickly. I think jobs are going to be, available as we begin to reproduce and manufacture again, and food services, I think, is going to recover. So I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful that, of course, the city will do any and everything it can for its employees and for the community.
We thank you for your time today. Bob, final closing comments or questions for the mayor?
So, sir, you mentioned maybe taking some personal time for yourself to make sure that your stress levels are down and your mental health is keeping you moving along, because that keeps our immune system strong. and just keeps leaders like you moving along and doing the things they need to do. Are you able to take any time to play some tennis maybe, or to get out and take a walk? Are you doing anything for yourself?
Well, fortunately, I have a pretty substantial backyard, so and I have my grandson here.
Oh, great, great.
We're running around creating games that keeps both of us moving.
Beautiful.
That's always good. And you know, my yard has never looked better. I'm out there doing those types of things, and taking room by room and going through and throwing away stuff that projects you've put off for years. Now's the time to do that. But making sure that you're staying in contact with your family. You know, I've said before, I have a mother that's 101, and it's been a month now since I've been able to see her, because I want to protect her. So, you know, just phone calls, regular phone calls, letting people that you may not have talked to in some time. I think this is self-reflection time as well, and reprioritizing your goals. I think a lot of people are going to look at life a whole lot differently now. The things that we were stressing and so pressured about on day to day, now that they're gone, it gives you time to be creative. I saw an interview not too long ago, a person talking about restructuring his company because now they're going to have to reinvent their jobs. You know, he's a guy that went out and did, talking to mass groups of people. That's not going to happen anymore for at least the next 4 or 5 months. He's going to find another creative way to make that income. And I think that's where our creativity is going to be improved as we go through this process.
Yes, sir. So on that note, you and I are going to have to get together and talk about the next state of the city, because I don't see 750 people sitting in close quarters.
That is true.
But we will, and we'll make that a grand event together. So I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
So thanks very much for taking time and talking to us today. Enjoy your grandson. I know that it's a grandson, right?
Yes, correct.
And is your son still in New York City?
No, my son he came down. He self-quarantined for 2 weeks. Today is when he rejoined the family. So everybody is at home and enjoying each other.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And your family is in my prayers, and the whole city is in my prayers. So thanks very much, sir.
We appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you.